Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to another edition of Primetime News on TV1. I'm Charlene Benedict for the Newsfirst team.
And I'm Thiruni Karunaratna. Let's start off with your headlines for tonight.
Road to Election 2024.
Starting off with your top story tonight, Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa and Mahinda Amaravira reasserted today that the proposed 22nd constitutional amendment will have no impact on the upcoming presidential election. In contrast, the chief opposition whip Lakshman Kiriyalla alleges that the government's introduction of this draft amendment in Parliament next week is a strategic maneuver to influence the electoral process.
The Parliament is scheduled to convene from Tuesday to Friday next week with a focus on legislative discussions. Notably, the 22nd Constitutional Amendment was not on the agenda for today's Committee on Parliamentary Business or Party Leaders meeting. Instead, discussions centered around specific bills related to public financial management and economic transformation, slated for debate on Thursday next week. Minister Mahinda Amaravira, following the meeting, emphasized that there are no intentions to postpone the election, firmly dispelling any notions of delay.
ජනාධිපතිවරණ තියෙනවා. ඒ කිසිම වෙනසක් වෙන්නේම නැද්ද? නෑ ස්ථිර වශයෙන්ම පුළුවන් තරම් ඉක්මනින් ජනාධිපතිවරණ තියෙනවා. ඒ සඳහා කිසිම බාධාවක් නැහැ. කවුරුවත් මේක නතර කරන්න කටයුතු කරන්නේත් නැහැ. හැබැයි ඒතකොට ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධන කෙරුම්පල් කවදා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ? ඒවා මේකට අදාළ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් දිනේ නියම කරනවනේ හිට අනිද්දා. 22 හැබැයි වෙච්ච වැරද්දක් නිවැරදි කිරීමක් තියෙන්නේ. ඒක බොහෝ දුරට ඉතින් මේ ඡන්දෙන් පස්සේ වුණත් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම දින දාලා නැහැ. ඒවා මේ ඊළඟ පාර්ලිමේන්තු වාර කිසියකට ඒක සම්බන්ධව දින දාලත් නැහැ. ගැසට් කරන්නෙත් නැහැ. ඒක බොහොම පෞකාලික සිද්ධ වෙයි. ඒ වැරද්දක් නිවැරදි කිරීමක් විතරයි එතන වෙන්නේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඡන්දිකල් දැමීමට බලපාන කිසිදු අවස්ථාවක් ඒක තුල නැහැ. විපක්ෂයේ බය වෙලා තියෙන විපක්ෂය චෝදනා කරන ඔබතුමාලා මේ වංගුවක් හදන්න නැහැ කියලා. නෑ ඉතින් මොනවා හරි මේ දවස්වල කියන්න දෙයක් නැති නිසා කියන එකක් නෙවෙයි. එහෙම නැතු වෙන කිසිම පදනමක් නැහැ ඒ කතාවල. කල් දාන්නේ නැහැ ස්ථිර වශයෙන්ම නැහැ. හැබැයි අපි ඉඩ දෙන්නෙත් නැහැ කල් දාන්න. මේක පැහැදිලි අපි මොකද අනිත් එක අපි මොන දේ ගෙනවත් පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ තුනෙන් දෙක උත්සම්මත කරලා එපා යන්න. කොහෙද මේක නැහැ. දැන් මේ පනත පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ආවට පස්සේ තුනෙන් දෙක ගන්න ඔබතුමාලා සහාය දෙනවනේ. මොනක් පනතද? ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධන. නෑ ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධන පනතක් එන්නෙත් නැහැ. නෑ නේ. ආවට අපි සහයෝගය දෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි නැතුව පාස් කරන්නත් බෑ. ඒ කියන්නේ ඡන්දය අනිවාර්යයි. ඡන්දය අනිවාර්යයි. අනිවාර්යයි ඡන්ද. බලන්න.
Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa called on the Mahanayaka Theros of the Malvathu and Askiri chapters of the Siam sect and asserted that the constitutional amendment will not affect the election.
මැතිවරණ කොමිසමේ කිසිම දෝෂයක් නැහැ. මැතිවරණ කොමිසමට අපි 19 වෙනි ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථා සංශෝධනය.
There is no error on the part of the Election Commission. We have granted them full powers and discretion through the 19th Constitutional Amendment to decide on the relevant dates within specified periods. They can set the date according to their convenience within the constitutional framework. I have submitted a cabinet paper to amend one word of Article 83 in the Constitution, changing the 6-year presidential term to 5 years, and the President has signed it. In the 19th Amendment, we changed each article from 6 to 5. However, we had missed one, and that is Article 83. The court had to address 3 cases due to this deficiency, and they have given judgments to prevent any exploitation of this situation. To avoid future misunderstandings, we have a duty to correct it and present it to Parliament. The Election Commission has clarified that this amendment is not related to any postponement of elections.
විමසන්න සිද්ධ වුණා. ඒ අඩුපාඩුව නිසා හැමෝම බැලුවා ඒකේ වාසිය ගන්න. ඒ වාසිය ගන්න බැරි විදියට අධිකරණයේ නඩු තීන්දුව 3ක් දීලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් තවදුරටත් ඉදිරියේදී ජනතාවගේ මනස විකෘති කරන්න සමහර ඔය වගේ දේවල් කරන්න ඉඩ තියෙන නිසා ඒ නිවැරදි කිරීම අපි යුතුයකමක් විදියට සලකලා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ඉදිරිපත් කරලා ඒක නිවැරදි කරනවා. මැතිවරණ කොමිසම කිව්වේ මේක සම්බන්ධව නෙමෙයි. කුමන හේතුවක් හෝ අධිකරණයේ නියෝගයක් දුන්නොත් ඒගොල්ලන්ට තියන්න බෑනේ එපයි කියලා. එහෙම එකක් නාවොත් තියනවා කිව්ව මිසක් මේ සංශෝධනයට සම්බන්ධ කරලා නෑ ඒක.
ගරු ඇමතුමනි නමුත් මේ කටුමුඩියේ මැතිවරණයට දෙන ගණනක් මාස ගණනාවක් තියෙද්දි මේ වැනි සංශෝධන ගැන ඒ ගැන සමහරුන් කියනවා මේක ඇත්තටම මැතිවරණේ කල් දැමීම සඳහා ගත්තේද? ඒක ඔබතුමාත් ඒකට හසු වෙලාද ගරු ඇමතුමනි?
ඉතින් දැන් මේ මම ඉදිරිපත් කරපුවම ජනතාව පිළිගන්නේ නැත්නම් කවුරු ඉදිරිපත් කරමද ඕක පිළිගන්නේ?
ඒ කියන්නේ ඔබතුමාට වගකීමෙන් කියන්න පුළුවන් නිසි පරිදි ජනාධිපතිවරණේ තියෙනවා.
වගකින් ඇතුව තමයි මම හැම දෙයක්ම කියලා තියෙන්නේ. බොහොම පැහැදිලිව කියනවා ජනාධිපතිවරණේ එක දිනයක්වත් කල් දාන්න අපි ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා.
Chief Opposition Whip Lakshman Kirialla points out that there are preparations to present the 22nd Amendment to Parliament next week. Highlighting that this situation could affect the election, Kirialla emphasises that the Election Commission should immediately announce the presidential election to avoid any complications.
The party leaders' meeting ended today without any mention of a constitutional amendment. However, there is a possibility of presenting a constitutional amendment to Parliament next week. After the 17th of July, the Election Commission has the authority to announce the presidential election. Why delay until the end of the month? With the 17th behind us, waiting another 10 or 12 days only allows the government to manipulate the situation. It's clear that the government is playing a game here. We are aware of the changes that occur when government officials shift. Next week, we expect the parliament to engage in further political maneuvering. I was surprised when an official suggested something to do with astrological timing. This is not a tradition. The government's intention to delay the announcement by another 10 to 12 days is evident. Despite calls for a swift decision, we have seen similar tactics during the local government elections.
The Election Commission is now empowered to proclaim the date for the presidential election. The power was vested to the Commission yesterday. However, at a media briefing held the day before yesterday, the chairman of the National Election Commission stated that due to several factors, the date for the election could only be announced before the end of this month. What are these reasons mentioned by the Election Commissioner? The provision of a certain time period from the nominations date to the election date for presidential candidates to carry out promotional activities and propaganda. The requirement of a certain time period for election officials to conduct elections and related activities. The convenience of election dates for the voters to cast their votes.
Before announcing the dates for the presidential election, as Sri Lankans, we are obliged to also take into consideration certain traditions, especially on the dates set to accept nominations. We consider auspicious times. Our team takes into consideration inauspicious times so that all candidates can finish handing over their nominations within those 2 hours. We avoid these inauspicious times when setting dates to accept nominations. We need to ask the National Election Commission whose inauspicious times they are taking into consideration. The power to proclaim dates of the presidential election is vested with the Election Commission. Usually elections are held on a Saturday and a school holiday, as we believe the presidential poll should be conducted on a date between the 14th of September and the 17th and 18th of October. Therefore, the Election Commission can exercise its powers to work with the district secretaries and hold the elections without giving undue prominence to these inauspicious times.
ආයතන ඒ වගේම දිස්ත්‍රික් ලේකම් කාර්යාල එක්ක ඒ දිනේ බලලා මැතිවරණ කොමිසමට තනි බලයක් තියෙනවා මැතිවරණේ පවත්වන්න.
It has been 48 hours since the Election Commission was empowered to proclaim the dates of the presidential poll. But the Commission is saying that they will announce the dates after considering inauspicious times. We must inform the Election Commission not to aid the agendas of certain factions. We also must ask the NEC why they are postponing the announcement of the dates. Why do they need 15 days to do it? Even if Ranil Wickremesinghe wants to buy time, the National Election Commission cannot say that they will check auspicious times and court orders. No one has filed anything in court. We are against Ranil Wickremesinghe violating the people's right to vote. We are also against the Election Commission postponing the announcement of the election dates, even if it is on purpose or not. The Election Commission should be held accountable to the people of this country, as they have been constitutionally empowered by now. The Election Commission should work for the people and not for Ranil Wickremesinghe. It is not a subordinate to the President. We saw what happened with C.D. Lenever's fundamental rights petition and how the Supreme Court rejected it. We saw Vajirabe Vartan and Palitha Rangi Bandara say that they had come to the Election Commission to emphasize that they want an election to be held soon. For whom are you staging this drama? Can they win in a referendum? Ranil Wickremesinghe only managed to get 21,000 votes. The party as a whole failed to get even 200,000 votes. This is all a conspiracy. They are planning on bringing a constitutional amendment to Parliament by 2 weeks' time and then surpass the proclamation date. Do not wait to announce election dates. The people are waiting to elect a leader who can be held accountable to the people. Do not play with the people of this country.
දේශපාලන නායකත්වයක් පත් කර ගැනීමේ අභිලාෂයකින් මේ රටේ ජනතාව ඉන්නේ. නිසා ජනතාව එක්ක සෙල්ලම් කරන්න එපා.
The chairman of the Election Commission said that the official announcement regarding the scheduling of the presidential election is expected to be made next week. Now, he made these comments during this evening's Davasa program on Sirasa TV.
Speaking from years of experience, many candidates who submit their nominations do so according to an auspicious time and also consider the direction and other traditions. That is why I said that when nominations are being called for, these matters too will be considered. Apart from that, this process does not entail the inauspicious times. In addition, there are concerns over the date as well. Though the Election Commission is vested with the power to declare the election on the 17th of July, we can only hold the election after the 17th of September. If we declare the election on the 17th of July, the 17th of September is a Poya day. We cannot hold an election on Poya day. Then the 18th is the day after Poya. Temples and other locations that will be used as polling stations will encounter issues in movement and other matters. I can responsibly state that the date of the election will be the most suitable date, immediately after the 17th of September. The election notice will be made public next week. The Secretary of the Ministry of Justice was instructed by the Justice Minister to defer the publication of the 22nd Constitutional Amendment in the Official Gazette. This amendment, which has received Cabinet approval, shall remain unpublished until the conclusion of the presidential election.
We brought
the 22nd Constitutional Amendment to amend something that wasn't corrected in Article 83. That mistake led to more than 3 court cases over various doubts. The Supreme Court issued clear determinations on those matters. However, we presented this amendment to prevent any further doubts from arising in the future. But the media has created uncertainty among the people that this may be used as a tactic to postpone elections. People shouldn't have such doubts during this election period, so I informed the Justice Ministry Secretary to suspend publishing the Gazette until the conclusion of the election.
What is the position of the United National Party? The General Secretary of the United National Party spoke about this at a meeting of youth representatives of the party.
Many people ask as to if the election will be held. Why wouldn't the election be held? Further postponing this election is disadvantageous to us. We have to spend more. We have to invest more of our time. Therefore, we have no need to delay the election. Out of the candidates contesting the presidency, the only candidate who did not run away from the problems and faced them is the candidate from the party that you and I represent, the United National Party. All of the other candidates ran away. Despite our party falling to just 1 seat in parliament, our leader did not run away from any of the problems. He went fearlessly and accepted the challenge. Our party and our leader is ready to accept this challenge as well. Not only accepting this challenge, 6.9 million is the number of votes that set a record in Sri Lanka. It is certain that Ranil Wickremesinghe will get even more votes than that, and he will become the president of this country.
The National People's Power claims there is no more room to remain in power through conspiracies hatched in places.
It's time to convey a clear message to Ranil Rajapaksa. The era has come to an end. Despite any efforts to the contrary, the reality remains unchanged. All strategies have proven futile. In light of this, why run for office again? It arises from the disarray that engulfs the leadership. Thus, it is imperative to address Ranil and the Rajapaksas directly. The nation's economy has been driven to bankruptcy under your stewardship. The democratic process itself is now teetering on the brink of insolvency. Our country is incapable of sustaining these dual failures. Therefore, it is essential to proceed with the election. Let the voting process unfold without interference. We are well aware of these ongoing schemes. Rest assured, they will be thwarted. November 18th will mark the definitive conclusion of Ranil's political journey, but not his alone. The stage is now set for the advent of a people-centric government.
එතුවක් රජයපු කාලේ අවසාන. ඉන්න ජනතාවාදී පාලනයකට දැන් බිම සකස් වෙලා තියෙනවා.
Parliamentarian Gamini Waleboda disclosed details about preparations for another political tactic.
The cabinet has approved the 22nd constitutional amendment, which is a conspiracy to postpone the presidential election, and it will be presented to Parliament next week to replace the 5-year term with 6 years in the constitution. It has become a challenge for the Ranil Wickremesinghe faction to get a 2/3 majority in Parliament because the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna is presenting a separate candidate for the presidential election, challenging the incumbent president who was appointed by them. So the president has directed his attention towards using presidential powers to dissolve parliament to manage the uncertainty. As of yesterday, we received information and many inquiries regarding whether the Gazette to dissolve parliament on the same day if the 22nd amendment is defeated in parliament. That is the current situation. As a result, the political climate may be pushed towards holding a general election before the presidential election.
රටේ දේශපාලන වාතාවරණය වෙනස් වෙන තීරණයක් වීමේ හැකියාව නිර්මාණය වෙලා තිබෙනවා.
Today, the Sri Lanka Muslim Congress questioned why President Ranil Wickremesinghe hasn't announced his candidacy yet.
Until President
Ranil Wickremesinghe submits nominations as a presidential candidate, he can take a stance and declare that he isn't a presidential candidate. That is why he has repeatedly said an election wasn't declared and he hasn't spoken of running for presidency in public. That may be because he is trying to use a tactic using presidential powers to dissolve parliament or table the 22nd amendment as an attempt to increase his term to 6 years through parliament. He can do anything if he is not a presidential candidate, so he will not publicly say he is a presidential candidate until he submits his nomination. That leads us to suspect that he is taking advantage of the situation and attempting to use a tactic as the sitting president and not as a presidential candidate.
Rohana Bandara from the Samagijana Balawega made a revelation.
After 2 years in office, the time has come to address the presidential election. It suggested that a referendum be held, the cabinet reshuffled and the constitution amendment. Ideally, these constitutional changes should have been proposed earlier. Yet there seems to be no urgency for such amendments. Instead, there are attempts to exploit loopholes to delay the election, even if it is just by a day. Rumours are circulating about a deal with Basil Rajapaksa, offering him the role of Prime Minister in exchange for support. It appears that loyalty to Basil is key to win over the party. One must first appease him. Mahinda Rajapaksa's influence is waning. Ranil Wickremesinghe reportedly views Basil Rajapaksa as the architect behind the scenes, despite Namal's involvement. The word is that Basil Rajapaksa is being promised the premiership with assurances of support for his own presidential aspirations thereafter.
Leader of Tello, Selva Madaikalanadan, joining an event in Mullaitivu, stated that election dates must be proclaimed.
Since the Election Commission has been empowered to proclaim the dates of the presidential election, that should be done on time. The postponement of this is unacceptable. The power is in their hands. We request the Election Commission to announce the dates of the presidential polls as soon as possible.
The Election Commission was empowered to declare the presidential election 1 day ago.
The power of the people.
The Cabinet has approved the proposal presented by President Ranil Wickremesinghe to identify areas occupied by plantation workers on state-owned plantation lands which are managed by the State Plantation Corporation and regional plantation companies, and to draft legislation to formally designate these areas as new settlement villages. A special discussion in this regard was also held at the Presidential Secretariat yesterday under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The President's Media Division said that all parties have expressed agreement on the timely proposal to enact legislation declaring areas where plantation workers dwell within state-managed plantations overseen by the State Plantation Corporation and regional companies as new villages. Parliamentarian Mano Ganesan had emphasized the crucial need to secure land rights for current plantation dwellers under this initiative, submitting a corresponding proposal to the President. Addressing the matter, President Ranil Wickremesinghe underscored the government's ongoing commitment to implementing programs that provide freehold land and housing rights to residents across villages, towns and plantations. Furthermore, President Ranil Wickremesinghe recommended initiating the legislative process by consulting regional plantation companies and proposed the formation of a committee comprising parliamentarians and representing plantation communities and relevant stakeholders to oversee the process. Minister Jeevan Thondaman, State Minister Arvind Kumar and parliamentarians Mano Ganesan, Palani Digambaram, Vadivel Suresh, Belu Kumar, M. Rameshwaran and M. Uday Kumar participated in the discussion.
Meanwhile, the Tamil Progressive Alliance convened a media briefing and spoke about a discussion held with the President yesterday and the issues faced by estate workers.
The rooms that were constructed by the colonizers 200 years ago are being declared as villages. That is what he said will be included in the cabinet paper and presented. We rejected it. As people with self-respect, can we accept it? I hope that these views expressed by me will be accepted by our Sinhala brothers and sisters. I request them to accept it. We want to become Sri Lankans. Do you like it when our people are isolated on the mountains? We asked them not to do it. This is the policy of the TPA. We told them that in English, Tamil and Sinhala. It would have been good if they accepted it, but that is not what is happening here. They are trying to keep these people here for another 200 years. Just like the colonizers kept them in the lined rooms that they built for 200 years, the local colonizers are now trying to do that again. This cannot be done. This will be changed under a government of Sajith Premadasa. That is our progressive journey. That is all that I said.
Leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa said that it is the second humanitarian operation in Sri Lanka to get the country out of bankruptcy.
At a time when everyone is looking for answers and solutions, the solutions to our country's issues cannot be solved through only the state income and expenditure. We need to go beyond the usual framework. Bankruptcy is not something that is normal, it is abnormal. This was the first time that our country is plagued with this cancer that is bankruptcy. It's not something that we contracted, it's something we created with our own mistakes. But it can be fixed. To do that, we need to use new technology, new methods, new strategies, and a positive mentality. Coming out of bankruptcy is the second humanitarian mission. The main goal in this humanitarian mission is to create the economic growth of the country and not limit the economic growth to the minority elite section of this country, but to distribute the benefits and resources to all sections of society.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa expressed these views during a program to provide smart classrooms to Halkandawila Mahavidyalaya in Beruwala, Kaluthara.
Minister of Public Security Tiran Alas called a media briefing this morning and provided an explanation regarding the progress of Operation Yuktiya.
An opposition parliamentarian said there is no drug menace or underworld in Sri Lanka and it is merely an issue that we created. We have seized drugs worth 19 billion rupees, 955 weapons, 42 grenades and a large amount of explosives during Operation Yuktiya, including 11,800 grams of TNT and 525 grams of gunpowder. 54 shootings and 38 8 murders were reported prior to the commencement of Operation Yuktiya, and we launched the operation in March to go after underworld criminals. 10 murders have been reported since it was launched. Look at the price of drugs. How much did a packet sell for? And look at the rates now. Then you will be able to determine if drugs have been reduced or been eradicated. The challenge to preventing incidents is the availability of weapons. We requested the public to provide information regarding weapons, but we didn't receive a lot of information. However, we still will be able to successfully prevent incidents within a year if we continue in this manner. However, we have many obstacles, including from lawyers. That is why the IGP was also dragged into many cases. To stop it, they depend on drug money. There is a handful of famous senior lawyers who depend on drug money.
The
minister also commented on the murder of Club Vasantha.
Regarding the Aturugiriya incident, we have arrested most of the suspects and only 2 are at large. We have also arrested everyone involved in the Ambilipitiya shooting, including the rider and the shooter. As of yesterday, we have arrested all suspects linked to the Ambalangoda shooting.
අම්බලංගොඩ ෂූටිං එකෙත් ඊයේ වෙනකොට ඒකත් අපි අත්අඩංගුවට අරගෙන ඉවරයි.
අතුරුගිරිය සිද්ධිය සම්බන්ධයෙන් පොලිසිය හැසිරුණු ආකාරය සම්බන්ධව ඔබතුමාගේ දැඩි අප්‍රසාදයට ලක් වුණා. මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඔබතුමා යම්කිසි විනය පරීක්ෂණයක් හෝ විනය ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් අරගෙන තියෙනවද?
ඒ වැරද්දට අපි
We issued stern warnings to the relevant people regarding the incident to ensure that it will not happen again. You don't ask me to reward them for the arrest they've made in the same manner you call for disciplinary action. The officer told me that many people gathered there and he didn't notice it at the time. We need to understand that. Senior DIG Nilantha Jayawardena has been sent on compulsory leave effective immediately. Issuing a statement, the National Police Commission said that the senior DIG was sent on compulsory leave until the conclusion of the disciplinary inquiry over the Easter Sunday attack. The National Election Commission said that the senior DIG was sent on compulsory leave in the interest of conducting the disciplinary inquiry against him. Still in local news, the Court of Appeal granted bail to Venerable Galagodatte Nyanasara Thera, who was previously sentenced to a 4-year term of rigorous imprisonment. The court set the bail at 50,000 rupees in cash and 2 personal sureties amounting to 500,000 rupees each.
Venerable Galagodatte Nyanasara Thero, convicted on 2 counts including the disruption of national and religious harmony, received his original sentence from the Colombo High Court on the 28th of March 2016 for comments he made in Colombo at the same year over the Kurugala matter. Following a denied bail request by the High Court on the 2nd of April, he lodged an appeal with the Court of Appeal challenging the verdict. After deliberation, the Court of Appeal issued its decision on the appeal today, resulting in Venerable Nyanasara Thero's release on bail. The constant worry about clean water can be a heavy weight. For 470 families in Nagavila, that weight is no more. A new water purification system brings long-awaited relief and a healthier path forward. The Port Access Elevated Highway project, initiated in 2019 to alleviate traffic congestion in Colombo, is now nearing completion. Newsfirst Budmin Amar Divakara brings us more on this project.
Right behind me is the Colombo Harbour, and right in front of me is the city of Colombo. You might be wondering where I am right now. This is the longest bridge in Sri Lanka with a length of 5.3 kilometers connecting the New Kalani Bridge and the port city of Colombo. This is the story of the Port Access Elevated Highway.
The Port Access Elevated Highway project, supported by the Asian Development Bank, is a monumental undertaking with an estimated cost of 28 billion rupees. Spearheaded by the China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation and overseen by the Transport and Highways and the Road Development Authority, this project is a testament to infrastructural advancement. Spanning 5.3 kilometers, this 4-lane flyover is said to be the longest in the nation, carving a path from Ingurukade entrance to Golf Face. Its primary primary objectives are to ease the flow of traffic within Colombo and enhance the operational efficiency of the Colombo port.
By the month of October, we will complete the work on this project and hand it over to the general public. This project has a speciality because it will give a separate entrance to the Colombo harbour. It is being built within the port premises. We plan to finish all the work by the month of September and hand over the port access elevated highway to the public in October.
The port access elevated highway will be the latest engineering marvel in Sri Lanka, connecting thousands from all over Sri Lanka to the heart of Colombo in the future.
The Oman Maritime Security Centre said that search and rescue operations have successfully found 10 crew members of the oil tanker Prestige Falcon 9.
Those rescued alive include 8 Indians and 1 Sri Lankan national. The Oman Maritime Security Centre said that tragically 1 crew member was found deceased. The Indian Navy warship INS Teg is spearheading a critical search and rescue operation off the coast of Oman following the capsizing of an oil tanker on the 15th of July. As of today, the mission has successfully rescued 9 crew members, including 8 Indian nationals and 1 Sri Lankan. According to data released by the Indian Navy, the skipper is identified as Vitya Kumar Kadir Gamadasan, a Sri Lankan. Kuganesan Maheshadasan, another Sri Lankan, serves as the second officer. In addition, Dayaniti Appasamy, also a Sri Lankan, is the vessel's chief engineer. The operation was launched immediately after the MV Falcon Prestige capsized approximately 25 nautical miles southeast of Ras Madraka, Oman. INS Teg has deployed advanced equipment and personnel to locate and assist the remaining crew members who are still unaccounted for.
An American think tank specializing in US foreign policy and international relations says that Sri Lanka's bond deal should not set a precedent. Brad W. Setzer of the Council on Foreign Relations notes that rather than reducing the risk of future debt troubles, Sri Lanka's macro-linked bonds set up the risk that Sri Lanka will fall back into debt trouble in 2029 or 2030.
The Newsfirst Finance Report.
An American think tank specializing in US foreign policy and international relations, Council on Foreign Relations, notes that Sri Lanka's macro-linked bonds are in fact not really macro-linked bonds. Brad W. Setzer of the Council on Foreign Relations says that after 2027, Sri Lanka's macro-linked bonds are standard fixed income instruments which provide no help in the event of future shocks. He adds that the final restructuring terms are just left open until just after Sri Lanka's IMF program ends, and the creditors and Sri Lanka have agreed that the final terms will largely be a function of Sri Lanka's dollar GDP between 2025 and 2027, noting that the new bonds thus aren't true state contingent instruments. Brad Setzer says the new bonds are thus structured to game the IMF's fiscal targets and increase the return bondholders get out of Sri Lanka's debt exchange rather than to insulate Sri Lanka against future risks. He claims that innovation in the macro-linked bonds is that the terms of exchange aren't fixed until after Sri Lanka's current IMF program has expired.
The Newsfirst Finance Report.
Human Rights Watch has warned against Sri Lanka's continued use of the notorious Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Human Rights Watch said that Sri Lankan authorities continue to use Notorious Prevention of Terrorism Act to target perceived opponents and minority communities without credible evidence to support the allegations despite repeated pledges to end the practice. It added that while some victims have suffered years of arbitrary detention and torture, others are persecuted even after the case against them is dropped. Meenakshi Ganguly, Deputy Asia Director at Human Rights Watch, said that Sri Lanka's extensive domestic security apparatus routinely uses baseless accusations of terrorism to target innocent people, silencing critics and stigmatizing minority communities. HRW recommends that the government should impose a full moratorium on the PTA and work to repeal it, and the authority should draft rights respecting counter-terrorism legislation in consultation with experts and civil society. It also noted that foreign partners, including the United States, EU and UK, should insist that Sri Lanka abides by commitments to repeal the law. Human Rights Watch also recommended that the UN Human Rights Council should renew the mandates of Resolution 46.1 for reporting and investigating human rights violations in Sri Lanka. Meenakshi Ganguly, Deputy Asia Director at Human Rights Watch, said that foreign governments seeking to support improved governance and respect for human rights should prioritize action to end the Sri Lankan government's misuse of counter-terrorism powers.
Foreign Minister, President's Counsel Ali Sabri met with the Romanian Prime Minister for talks.
Sri Lanka's Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri called on Romanian Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu. He said that they discussed the importance of cooperation amongst middle-income countries to overcome multiple crises faced by the world. Romanian Prime Minister identified that modern politics is economics and spoke highly of the closely integrated Sri Lanka workforce in Romania, creating a win-win partnership for both countries. Both sides have agreed to consolidate relations further in the multifaceted areas that have been identified. The Foreign Affairs Minister also met with the President of the Romanian Senate. They held a discussion on the overall facets of bilateral relations, focusing particularly on strengthening interactions between the parliamentary friendship groups of the two countries.
Protests in Kenya and Bangladesh have captured global attention. The World Today has the details.
Kenyan police have banned protests in the center of the capital Nairobi and surrounding areas until further notice, citing their leaderless nature that has made it difficult to enforce safety. It comes after a month of anti-government protests in which scores of people have been killed, while more protests are planned for Thursday. Nairobi city center has been the heart of the youth-led protests, which have also taken place across the country. The protests began against unpopular tax rises, but after they were withdrawn, have broadened out, including demands for President William Ruto to resign. The ban has sparked outrage online, with some arguing that the police do not have such powers, as Kenyan law gives citizens the right to hold demonstrations. Police fired tear gas to scatter protesters in Bangladesh on Thursday, while authorities cut some mobile interest services, as violent clashes that have killed 6 and injured hundreds this week showed no signs of slowing. Shops and offices were open in Dhaka, the capital, but there were fewer buses on the streets as a call of nationwide shutdown from students demanding abolition of a quota of 30% reservations drew little response. The protests are the first significant challenge to Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government since she won a 4th straight term in January in an election boycotted by the opposition Bangladesh National Party. Angered by high youth unemployment, with nearly 32 million out of work or education among a population of 170 million, the students are pushing for abolition of the quota of 30% reservations for the families of freedom fighters. Authorities had shut all public and private universities indefinitely from Wednesday and sent riot police and the border guard paramilitary force to university campuses to keep order.
The Polonnaruwa National Cricket Stadium in Hingurakuda was declared open today. The opening ceremony was chaired by former President Maithripala Sirisena and Minister of Sports Harin Fernando.
Sri Lanka Cricket spent 170 million rupees for the first phase of the Polonnaruwa National Cricket Stadium. Built on a 45-acre site, the stadium consists of 10 central pitches. Plans are in place to develop the stadium under several phases. An exhibition match was also held with the participation of veteran cricketers to mark the opening of the stadium. The exhibition match between Royal Central College in Polonnaruwa and Central College Anuradhapura was held thereafter.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight.
Thank you for watching.
Good night.